with certain mistakes, then they hit their children. But then there are some parents also, when they go to school and their children are facing disciplinary actions, what happens, when they're with the teachers or with the board of management, they'll really side with the teachers. But then the moment they come from there, they'll tell the child, I was just putting a show to show the teachers that you are a little bit careless, but I don't mean it. So I've had instances where parents do that, and it's also a concern that we need to raise, because now what are you telling this child when you go against what you had already said in the board meeting? Yeah. Thank you.
I'd like to say something. What is that for now? It's frozen, I can't hear. Dr. Araka, both your microphones are on mute.
Oh, okay. Can you hear me now?
Loud and clear.
Okay. So you're going to weigh in on that, yeah, Dr. Gerald?
Yeah.
Yes.
Now, okay, we cannot disagree with all this that is said, but I can give you 3 or 4 instances where we've had students brought for toxicology, drug screens from high schools, some of them national schools. When they're brought, I'll give you an example of one of very nice national schools, and out of the 9 we got, 7 of them turned positive for marijuana use. And the moment we gave the results, the parents themselves came and said, no, this is not true. My child does not use these things. And I asked them a simple question. Has your child been home in the last 1 month? And they said, yes, they've been in school for only about 3 weeks. I told them, okay, fine. Then let's get a secondary opinion. Let's get another institution. We test these drugs and see. And they still came out positive. And the parents were still denying, right? And you see, what parents forget is that some of these things are not diseases or behaviors reserved for certain places. What the parent has brought up the child is what makes the difference. That's where nature and nurture come into play. Okay, but when you get to this collective kind of behavior in high schools, for example, what happened with Starehe girls with the mass hysteria, where 2-3 students get hepatitis. And yes, they vomit, they're lethargic and all this, and the whole school almost goes on a riot. This mass hysteria kind of thing. At that point, each child loses this autonomy, and they have this collective kind of group thinking. And it is very difficult. You look at the fads, okay? If a fad is a short-lived excitatory phase, or, like a dance style that has just come out.
Yeah.
Kids from, you get a child from Kisumu dancing to the same thing as a child in Nairobi who's dancing to the same thing as a child in Mombasa who's dancing to the same thing. If you look at riots, all these are just collective thinking examples. Riots, for example, there's the group thinking, everyone loses their autonomy. So even if you brought up your child well in best behavior and all that, and around the school they're threatening, there's the hype, we want to ban, we want to leave the school and all that. At that given point, there's no Form 1, Form 2, Form 3, or Form 4. The Form 4s may lead, but the rest of the children follow. At that given point in time, does your child become bad? Do you throw away the water, the bucket, and the child? Okay, so when we're looking at parents are just one part of it, but we have to accept that society has changed, that these kids communicate all through the whole time, whether it's through festivals, whether it is through the social media, whatever it is. So at that given point in time, it's each individual parent and the child's upbringing. But when they're put together, all this turns into collective thinking. And that is a flood. Okay, that's all I wanted to add.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Nganga. Let me just read another comment from the audience. They're saying currently parents have organized transport to and from school, hence avoid public transport. As for pocket money, some schools have organized with banks to have debit cards, hence avoid cash. And well, this is interesting. I mean, if they're not able to have cash to use, so debit cards so they can use to use the money. As for internet, drugs, sex, etc., let parents have candid discussion since knowledge is power. And parents play the major role with teachers, religion, community, play a complementary role. I think parents here have been implicated a lot. And I'd like to go back to Dr. Josephine Omondi to tell us the experiences that maybe you've come across regarding these issues and parents, not necessarily drugs, because I think we've dwelled a lot on drugs, but perhaps problems that are separate from the drugs that have brought maybe a teenager and a parent to you to sort of help. What sort of experiences have you had with that?
Thanks, Dr. Okay, there are different styles of parenting, and many times we apply what was applied on us and maybe a few experiences from other people through consultation. Now, some of the children, the young people that we see, they have parents who are thoroughly enablers. Enablers in that behavior, in the sense that there is no consequence, there is no talk about the bad behavior, and they are left to grow as if, like trees that are not pruned. Now that is dangerous, because it means the society will prune them the hard way. There are parents who are very caring and they follow the child to the letter. Obviously, they give them some freedom, but so that they can monitor whether this child is trustworthy or not. Now, we need to recognize that around this age, there's a lot of dishonesty, lies, dishonesty, and so it's very difficult to know whether the child is actually genuine or not, because they lean more towards their peers than towards their parents. And also parents then find it very difficult. So sometimes because of their absence, they decide to just give. But these children who are given, they don't know how to respond to when they are not given. So I would, from my experience, I think we've got the extremes, the very good, those who are very, very permissive, those who are very a little bit democratic, and then those who are using a mixture. But whichever the case, there are definitely other factors which have been mentioned by other speakers. There are other factors that contribute to this, so it cannot be parents alone. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Wandia Karago. Yes, Dr. Mondi has tried and removed that load a bit from parents, that it's a contributive effort. So my question to you is, what psychological safety methods can maybe parents try and institute? Yes, they have to work, as Dr. Anbayo has said, but how can they still retain that relationship with their teenagers? How can they still have those spaces? Yes, the parent has gone to work in the morning at 8 and has come back, at 8 at night. But when they have those few moments, how can they create the psychological safe spaces so that they can have these discussions or the challenges that the teenager is facing?
Okay, thank you, Dr. Araka. Firstly, I believe the parents need to also understand the emotional changes that are happening at that stage of their children's lives, so that they understand that right now they're not their main influencers. Their main influencers are their peers. Perhaps also to find that the child now is also struggling with sort of some form of independence. But of course, it's independence, but it needs to also be followed with some rules, like they have some boundaries set. So maybe parents understanding what exactly their children are undergoing during that period will help. So they realize that now it's not like your word is final. You have to sort of have a discussion with the child, so that you hear their point of view and they also get your point of view so that you can sort of reason together. And also trying to find out, because the teenagers are all closed up at this stage. If you do not form the relationship earlier in their life, trying to get into their life at this stage is not the easiest. But even with our busy schedules, we need to find periods where you can connect with them, even if it's at mealtime, like especially if you have the ones that are in the day schools. Maybe you drop them at school or just before they leave, small periods of connecting to pick up a bit about their day. Even in the evening when they come home from school, trying to find those opportunities. Or maybe the weekend, you may also try and make time, because you realize that they're not very good communicators at this stage, especially if we do not make the connections earlier. So first, I believe parents need to be educated about the changes, the psychological changes that are happening in teenagers. So here they're trying to get their identity, they're trying to get some independence. So you need to also give them a bit of independence, give them an opportunity to air out stuff. Remember, they're not children anymore. Even though if they're under 18, they're still regarded in the Kenyan law as children. But at this point, they are able to have some form of reasoning for themselves. And so you can have discussions with them around those areas. Of course, the changes that they are going through, talk openly about them, because now it's all out there. We don't talk to them about it. They are getting it from social media, from their phones. So having open discussions, there's nothing to hide now. So you've got to talk about those things openly.
Okay, still a follow-up on that. I think sometimes as well, as parents, we might not know how to start these conversations or how to even have them. Yeah, and it's not really a matter of being busy. We have the time. It's just that we don't know how to go about it. So how would you advise a parent?
Okay. For many parents, they're awkward conversations, because perhaps your own parents never ever talked to you about that. But these days, more and more forums are being formed. There are people always having talks, parenting talks on how to deal with teenagers. And so even looking out for such talks to just equip you with the skills of how to start up such conversations, I think is very important. Yeah. So that you can be able to find how to break ice on such topics, because I think parents need to be equipped with that. Yeah.
Thank you. Now, I can see we have some comments, and this one is going to Dr. Ann Boyo. You've been on both sides, and then you can give us a contribution as well. So someone is saying they have access to money, pocket money. Money means they have access to drugs and alcohol when they leave school or when they're even in school. Bullying due to cash handling, how to control pocket money. And then the next one is saying debit cards still mean they have access to ATMs when outside of the school. So I know, Dr. Anwar, you've been on both sides. You've been a high school teacher, so you've interacted with them directly. And then now as a clinical psychology, you're still interacting with them. I would like you to weigh in on that.
Thank you very much, Dr. Raka. And before I even get to that, as Dr. Have I missed an? As she made a contribution, something came up that making our children they need knowing the boundaries, knowing what they can do, knowing what they should not do, and being firm. And even now, that reminded me that as a teacher, okay, we were not killing still, but I think I had to devise ways of and this of course still relates to psychological safety, make the students see them, realize they have made a mistake, and there are consequences of rule breaking or rule whatever. And I think being creative, finding ways of ensuring that the students get ways to learn they have done something wrong, because if we don't teach them responsibility, that they cannot go beyond that, and there are consequences of mistakes, and they learn to appreciate that, is an important aspect for the young people when they're in school. And I think sometimes even for us parents, we fail on that. Now, I can think of instances of after a short break. We used to have short breaks, some breaks, and we all can remember during breaks, that's when the sun was at its best, and therefore you wanted to really delay a little bit and get to class after the teacher is in class. And I remember I told myself, I'm not going to send you out of class. Maybe that's what you want, and I must account for why is the student, why are you during my class? Because if you send them out again, that could also be an opportunity for them to get away of, they didn't want to learn. So one day when I got in class and I thought, those who are just come in now, we need to negotiate. If I get to class before you, you are going to learn, but you must learn the consequences of getting in class after me. So, and I'm not going to allow you to go outside and enjoy the sun, which is what you are doing. There has to be a very good reason for you. So we agreed, when you find me in class, come for your book. In fact, don't even bother asking for permission. Come for your book, your pen, your book, whatever we are going to use during that class, but stand next to the window where I can see you, and you must participate in class. And for sure, and where I put a full stop, where the others put, as I get out, I need to see you did your work. And I can tell you, rarely did anybody, because so you allow them to see where they break the law, then you say the rules, they say, okay, you've broken. Also tell them, look for something which, a punishment as you called it, which is equivalent to what you have done. And now that gives them a problem. Oh my goodness, what can I do? So slowly, by making them learn that rules need to be obeyed, you need to be within, but not getting into those in confrontation. And for sure, in fact, they'll pick a harder work than you'd even have given them. And they are the ones now who are responsible. And I'll tell them, once you are through, just call me, I inspect, and I see that you've done. So we can allow our students to realize that rules need to be followed, that is for sure, and there are consequences of doing those rules. Then once we give the parents who are concerned about psychological safety, how do we allow our students to speak out? Today, I don't know what happens, but Mwalim there gave how they used to have a barasa and what have you. What else can they do? So I know, and maybe because I was in charge of guidance and counseling, what was interesting is that we allowed them throw papers, just write something, throw, and whatever is disturbing. And I got students who were for other students who say, talk to so-and-so. And it was amazing to find that students actually look out for the welfare of others and say, so-and-so looks so disturbed, please talk to her, please talk to, and we have said. So it amazed me that students look out for others. And even another interesting case is a student opens school, and towards the end of the week, they tell me, please, teacher, I would like to go home. And I'm like, okay, we opened the other day. What's happening? When I left, my mother had quarreled with my father, and she had run away. She was not at home. Just want to go and find out whether she's back. Now,
Wow.
how do you okay, it wasn't within me to give students out. And so I have to liaise with the teacher who is concerned, maybe the boarding mistress, and without betraying that trust which the student has given you. So as teachers, I do believe there's a role we can play so that the students can feel they have somebody they can go to. Believe you me, they go to teachers for all sorts of things because they identify. They go to all sorts of, they get disturbed, and those small things which we keep thinking they are small, if they are not heard, they are the ones which build up, and they find that they are not able to. They explode whatever they would, whether they would throw stones, whatever they would do. So psychological safety within the schools is possible. It starts with the adults allowing the students to talk, express themselves, whichever way, whether it's writing those small notes to the teacher and they give and the teacher reads. And something else is that being people who talk on behalf of students. Sometimes they are students, and maybe if we learn a culture of maybe trying to be the ones who talk for the students, they could be having this problem, they could be, and this is where now parents and the class teacher, if the parents know, because that's the person who they are in contact with, who knows their child. So if parents can learn to ensure that their relationship with the class teacher is top notch, then you'll find that somehow the child tends to, they'll be like, oh my goodness, I'm going to be reported, and all those kind of things. So the final, you told me to comment on.
Someone had brought out the issue of money and ATMs.
Okay, maybe the ATMs.
How do you strike a balance between not too much and not too little?
You see, some schools have okay, ATM, maybe I don't know which school, those ones, maybe now they've really advanced until the children, they have the ATM, but it's good to have children to have pocket money. They need that money, because if they are not getting it, they'll be tempted to steal. They'll be tempted to look for other people who can provide them with the money. So the question is, does the school say that the money be kept with the school bazaar, or where the money is kept? You know, sometimes back, money had to be deposited with the school bazaar, and then they went for rate maybe on a Friday and what have you. Of course, it would be tough even if we searched. I know we did a search opening even bottles. Some schools don't even allow water to come in bottle, but you see now, if it's in lotion, is being packed in lotion, it means you have to take and start maybe sniffing up a little bit. So the school policy, which the parents have to buy in, within the school, the parents need to buy in. Once they buy in, then they see the need for that, then they'll be able to support. And I mean, that's my contribution, my thoughts rather. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, I think there's a parent here who's given a suggestion. I've come across a solution in use by schools. This is about the money. Is helping parents have control over pocket money. The parent is able to issue pocket money and see and control spending. And on closing day, the child is issued with the funds they need to get home. And I saw discussions around working with transport vendors to accept this solution for certain schools. I also saw the platform allow parents to teach students how to save part of their pocket money, basically financial literacy early on. We can embrace technology to help give parents more control and collaborate with students. Interesting. So financial literacy seems to be working a bit negatively on the students because it's the pocket money they're given, from what I've gathered, yeah? It's the pocket money they're given that they save to be able to buy drugs from where they're able to access it. I'll read a few more comments, then I'll ask for the remarks. So someone is asking, I came in late, but I have a question on the potential of psychological safety in schools, translating to psychological safety in the workplace. I'm a recruiter, and this is one of the biggest challenges I have to grapple with, finding people who will promote organizational psychological safety. Actually, the concept of psychological safety started in the workplace. The drive from Fitahi is to now replicate it in schools so that we can see how beneficial it can be between the interactions. Then someone asked, do you think minority populations like kids with disability, LGBT teens, and the academically slow are likely to suffer severe psychological safety issues compared to other kids? And what can schools do to support inclusivity for such children to support their growth and development? I think for this one, I'd like Dr. Josephine Omondi to give a comment on that. Do you think that minority populations like kids with disability, LGBT teens, and academically slow are likely to suffer severe psychological safety compared to the other kids?
Yeah, that's interesting. Now, these children, they also have brains that work, but those brains may be very slow. They may be taking a little bit of time to be able to make decisions, but all in all, they may end up overreacting or reacting in an abnormal manner or inappropriate manner. But whichever the case, they do have feelings, and therefore they also experience challenges in terms of psychological safeties at school. And that's why many times my recommendations, or I would recommend that these children are under the care of parents for as long as possible before they separate, because it gives them a lot of trust, and then they're able to maneuver their ways within a supportive system. When they go to boarding schools, it is not easy, but if they get good support, then they can manage. But many times, because of the numbers, because of inadequate facilities, they encounter a lot of difficulties, and some of them even refuse to go back to school. So I cannot say that they're different from the psychological, safeties in the regular schools. They experience the same, but probably their experiences are a bit over exaggerated because of their challenges with emotional control. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Omondi. I think we're running short of time. Another comment, this one Dr. Nganga is going to respond. My 15-year-old son came out to me as gay, and having listened to this webinar, I think I have failed my mandate as a parent, not being supportive enough, and it has messed with his safety in general. How can I bridge the gap to rebuild our relationship and support his psychological safety? Dr. Nganga, would you like to take that on?
Okay, sure. Now, the first thing I think as a parent he should do is thank his son for coming out honestly and for talking to him. At least it shows, number one, that he trusts him. Okay? Whereas the parent might not really be happy with what is going on or the child's sexual orientation that he has chosen, he needs to support him, because I think this child is going through a lot of psychological distress in school, with his friends, in society generally. Because even when the LGBT community comes to hospital, when we get to the part where we need to fill in their sex, most of them leave it blank, and then nobody wants to fill it. So you get the patient attendant does not know what to write. When they bring the file, they're like, I'm not really sure who it is. So this child already has that stigma and would explain why they feel the need to overly express themselves when the opportunity arises. Now, as a parent, there have been no genetic studies that have shown, or no psychiatric studies that have shown that being homosexual or same sex, attracted to the same sex, has been proven in any of these things. There are still a lot of studies ongoing about it. Whereas you might think that there's the environmental influence, you could think that society, or as a parent you failed, then it would not explain why you get even animals having the same kind of behavior. Okay? Now, in terms of his safety, as the parent, we don't expect you to go and fight his every fight, but you can also allow him to research, and you can guide him on safety and unsafety processes, because these people are vulnerable already. Their esteem is low, they're not really sure, they're confused, and most of all, they're predisposed to a lot of substance abuse and sexual abuse. We got a case in our national hospital where a gentleman ran away from Uganda as a refugee, and Museveni said that all the gay people should be killed. Then he came to Kenya in the promise of looking for a job, and he gets locked up in a house and is gang raped every day by 8 different men all the time. And he came suicidal. And I told him, no, the first thing you've done is a good thing you've said that, because now you've come to actually seek for help. And the first thing we do is take him to a place that he's safe, he's secure. There are homes, there are organizations, there are NGOs that can attach this, but this is your child and you're there at home with them. You can help them understand the vulnerability that they have, that they're easy to manipulate, and they're prone to abuse, whether physical, whether sexual, assault. I think that is for what we can advise him for now. There is really no treatment except psychotherapy for the LGBT community.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, as we come to a close, I'd like to get 3 remarks, yeah? One from Dr. Josephine Omondi on the last question that the parent is asking, how can I bridge the gap? Dr. Nganga has given us his view. How can I bridge the gap to rebuild our relationship, that is the parent and the child, and support his psychological safety? So I'd like Dr. Josephine Nganga and Dr. Anne Mbwayo to weigh in on that. And then lastly, I'd want Dr. Alex Waweru to comment on the students who were caught as they are on their way to school in possession and using alcohol and cannabis. Dr. Josephine?
Thank you very much, Dr. My comment is that bridging the gap will require parents to reflect back and ask themselves, what is the best thing for my child? How can I make this child better than myself? So in other words, we need to be the role models for these children. And once I'm a role model and the child can sustain trust in me, then I can be able to guide the child for the future. You'll find in our society that is missing. The role models that we had, we have all experienced the post-election violence in this country. And that was an eye-opener where adults are hurting adults and children were watching, children were hurt. Now that tells you that the society has missed the point. So if we can rebuild that, if we are kind enough to each other, then we will be able to model the same to our children. But that is not what we are experiencing today. And it is good that we talk about it. Maybe in another forum, Dr. Araka, we shall talk about Kenyan relating to Kenyans, because Kenyans are very hostile to each other. And we see it on the roads, we see it in banks, we see it in schools, we see when parents go for parent meeting, we see it between parents and teachers everywhere. people are angry at each other and they don't care about each other. So do we expect children to do the same? So I think that is something that needs to be corrected. Maybe the future generation will do, but for now we are in a complex situation. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Dr. Anwayo?
Okay, I would say that the parents should not feel ashamed seeking help, particularly if they feel there are areas where they are, for one reason or the other, they neglected the child, and now the child is coming up. So it would be helpful, on top of all that which I said, that the parent can also seek help. These days, they are professionals, whether even from within their church, from a trusted person whom they admire. Seeking help is not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of strength, so that they can be able to rebuild the relationship with the child. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I'm now back to Alex Oweru. What are these kids looking forward to after being caught using alcohol and cannabis in a public transport matatu?
All right, thank you very much. Now, I'll restrict this to the use of cannabis as well, because cannabis is still classified as a drug. And if you found in possession or in use of this, then you're likely to, if prosecuted and found guilty, you're likely to go to jail. Now, I mentioned earlier that the fact that children are classified as vulnerable persons under the law does not excuse them from criminal culpability. And so they need to be very careful as well, because like I said, these records are indelible, really. It's something that you'll carry with you forever. You know, these days, every time you apply for a job, you're asked for, you know, a certificate of good conduct. Now that is a record that is going to your, you know, to your file. And the justice system, and as much as in an ideal world would be very fair, there are situations where these children can't even answer to these charges when they go, you know, when they go to court. Gone are the days when, you know, prosecutors used to be policemen. These days you find a prosecutor who's a lawyer. Now, can a child answer the questions in court? You know, the stages of trial, when you're asked questions, how do they know whether to plead guilty or not guilty? In some instances, these children plead guilty and end up going through, you know, the whole process. You're sentenced and you're committed to an institution, and you come out and you don't know what's going on with your life. And so the focus now needs to move from the parents and the community at large to inform these children of the criminal culpability, as opposed to punishments that you will get at home. Punishments that come under the law are even harsher. You know, they're comfortable at home, but how comfortable will they be when they go to a postal institution? You know, what effect does that have on them? And I think the conversation needs to expand. And instead of us looking at this issue as, you know, children acting out, because it is acting out, you know, when they use these drugs, when you're burning the schools, what is the effect of that? Now, that is $1 million question. And that is a question that parents and the community and the teachers and everybody needs to bring together. We're living in an age where there's a real huge generational difference. People have access to information everywhere. Someone can easily find a mobile phone. And as much as these things are banned in schools, people still smuggle phones into schools. And these children are seeing all these things happening. So it's now up to us to really tell these children of, you know, the gravity of these things. And I think one of the things that's missing, in as much as we have, you know, counselors, psychiatrists, psychologists talking to the children and the teachers, I think there's a gap in the sense that sometimes the legal profession is left out. Paralegals need to come and speak to these children and tell them of what's going on. You know, we are talking from a point of assuming that these children will have access to lawyers, but the truth is most people don't. if a child is caught outside, sometimes a parent doesn't even know that my child has been arrested and is going through this process. The child might not want to, say that they've been arrested or call the parent or give the policeman the parent's number because they're afraid of it. And so it's a very dicey situation. It definitely needs more work, and I'd be happy to contribute to a further discussion in this. Thank you.
Absolutely, Alex. Yes, thank you very much. Now, I'd like to bring the session to a close. I think I'll read a few more comments. I'm sorry I won't be able to read all of them. School administrators on their part must desist from being draconian in school administration and be approachable both to parents and students. Wonderful session, thank you all. Another one is saying the young people are falling in the cracks as parents pass the buck to teachers, and teachers expect parents to teach their children life issues as they concentrate on curriculum. So I think today our take home is that parents have dropped their ball a bit on parenting and have left most of it to teachers, and teachers are very overwhelmed, not just having to raise students, but the numbers in the classrooms are also very overwhelming. I would like to thank you very much for your participation and making time to actively be online. We're going to have another session in 2 weeks, but the subsequent sessions now will be dealing specific issues. So if we're looking at the parent, we'll try and have someone who can give us strategies in how a parent can apply to create those psychologically safe spaces. How can you talk to your teenager about, let's say, sex? Or how can you talk to your teenager about drugs? Or how can you talk to your teenager about, the marital dysfunction that you have and how it's not related to them? How can you make them feel safe at home? So that's what we'll be having in that. So every 2 weeks, we'll try and have at least one discussion where we focus on one issue that is affecting our schools, and that is the stakeholders, either the teachers, the parents, or the students. So if anyone has got another remark to make, a final remark from the panelists, you're free to go ahead, and then we'll bring the session to a close.
Dr. Araka?
Yes, Dr. Mondi.
Yeah, I must appreciate, this was most wonderful. That was excellent job. That decision that you came up with, the plan.
Yes. Yeah.
Wow, congratulations. This is very good. Keep it up.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mondi. And I hope you'll still be available to make your contributions, because you're an expert in child and adolescent psychiatry, and we need a lot of that to understand.
I'll try. Thank you.
Thank you. Teresa? Robert, you can do Robert first.
Yeah, the matters involved are quite varied and overwhelming. And I think it has to start with me. If all of us were to start taking responsibility at individual levels, just like we are talking of global warming, that global warming cannot be sorted by one country, one person, or whatever. Every one of us to decide if we are going to do the right thing, to bring up these children in the right manner, then that is where we begin.
Okay, when you say starts with me, are you saying me as a teacher or me as a parent?
Me as an individual. Wherever we are, whether a teacher, a parent, all of us have to take our roles and bring up these young men and women.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Kimani. Teresa, you wanted to say something?
Yes, Dr. Ari, first is to thank you for the opportunity to share the knowledge with the people in here. Secondly, is to offer a practical solution. We are talking about us not having time with our children. Research shows that having just to spend about 10 minutes per child per day equals to quality time, and you get to know how your child was and therefore offer the necessary support. I thank you for the opportunity. opportunity, and I hope that we will continue to engage. And the other thing I just would like to urge parents is to start the conversation on hard topics early enough. Talk of substance use early enough, relating it to mental health, because most of the time the children go into substance use without having to understand the consequences. So when you relate that to mental health, then it becomes a bit more clearer to them. And they know that, for example, when I start using weed, then the consequences are dire. I might now, suffer from something like schizophrenia later on in life, which is a bit complicated to treat. So I thank you all for, having us, and I wish you all a good night.
Thank you very much, Teresa. Anyone else? A final remark?
I'd want to really say thank you. It was very enriching. It was really a very important conversation to have, and even having you included everybody, even a lawyer. We never thought about it. And I think his suggestion is good, that they need to hear the legal aspect of the consequences of the action. So it was. I hope we have learned something. We are going to pick on something. And to the parents, my final remark is, let your children learn that rules need to be followed and there are consequences of not following rules. And if we start that from home, then they will not find a problem where they say, even my mom does not beat me, even my dad, there's nothing you can do, my dad does, or my mom can do nothing. Yeah, so once we start that from home, because that's where it all starts, then by the time the child goes to school, even if they go a bit astray because of the friends, they will still have that bell within them, knowing, oh yeah, my mother, we negotiate, but we also know the limit at what she or he can get to. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Dr. Anwar. I think the consistency is very nurturing, such that rule following at school also happens at home. There are laws and boundaries that needs to be respected. I think Wandia Karago had something to say.
Yes, I wanted to say thank you very much for putting us all together, and how important it is that all the various stakeholders need to be involved, whether it's the teachers, parents, the people who are doing mental health work, the legal side. Thank you for putting us all together. I look forward to the next opportunity. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you. That's very reassuring. Yes, so thank you very much. I think we'll bring this to a close. Until next time, in 2 weeks, there'll be another flyer out for, and we'll have other panelists and see what other perspectives we can get. And of course, how as parents and how as students, we can try and have those psychological safe spaces, because I believe it's not just the authority that creates it. A child has to feel psychological safe to go and approach a teacher and tell them I have a problem. So it's both ways. So how do you create it around yourself as a student, and as an authority figure, how do you create it around yourself for those, let's say, below you, on the same level as you, or above you? So thank you very, very much for joining, and I hope to see you next time. Have a good evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Right. Thank you.
Bye. Bye. Have a good night.
Bye.
Good night.
Bye.